Papers. You want to take a roll call vote? I mean, roll call attendance, Nicole?
Sure. Becky,
Yes, present.
Matt,
Here.
Melissa,
Here.
Patrice,
Here.
Gilbert.
I'm here.
That's all I have for members, Becky.
Right. I'm sure I don't know what I did with my printed agenda. Put it somewhere. I'll just look on here. Is the first thing the record of action? Oh, public. Okay. Welcome, introductions and announcements. Anybody have any announcements? I do think we have some different people here who haven't been here before, so we should do some brief introductions. I'm Becky Bachikis. I'm the Director of Student Programs for the County Office of Education and the Chair of the Data Subcommittee. And I'll pass it to Denise.
Hi, everyone. I'm Denise Savkevich. I'm the Research and Evaluation Manager for the Office of Reentry and Justice, and I will pass it to Melissa.
Thank you. I'm Melissa Clavoon. I'm an assistant sheriff with the Sheriff's Office. I oversee our Administrative Services Bureau, so hiring and recruiting, training, personnel, and fiscal. And I will pass it over to Matt.
Hello, Matt Malone, Chief Counsel for this Contra Costa Superior Court. I'm always bad at passing. Patrice, can I pass to you?
You sure can. Hi, everybody. I'm Patrice Guillory, Director of the Office of Reentry and Justice. And I will pass it over to Gilbert.
Hello, this is Gilbert Salinas, the Chief Equity Officer for Contra Costa Health Services. And I will pass it on over to Denise.
Oh, Gilbert, I've already announced myself, but thank you for that twice. I will pass it over to Shayla, who I believe, is this your first meeting back from mat leave?
I'm still technically on maternity leave, but I wanted to join the call today.
Well,
Shayla,
congratulations.
thank you. I got a couple more weeks till I'm officially back, but Shayla Bonner here, community organizer. And I'm sorry I joined late, so I'm not sure who's left.
I can help you. How about Cheryl?
Yeah, said it. I'm the oversight body and usually join these meetings. Thank you. And let's see. So I believe, oh, Melissa, Miss Melissa.
I have actually gone already.
Oh yeah, that's right. So I think you're just with the public now, Miss Becky.
Okay, good. We definitely want to know who's here from the members of public as well. So if anybody would like to introduce themselves from the members of the public, we can go ahead and do that. So Jill, you want to start?
Hi there, Jill Ray with Supervisor Anderson's office, and I'll pass it to Elisa.
Hi, Elisa Robinson, Office of Supervisor Diane Burgess.
Great. And how about Emma Lou?
Good afternoon, all. My name is Emma Lowell. I'm a Bay Area educator, a member of the public, and a mom of a young biracial incarcerated man in Contra Costa. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. And Ozzy, is that how you say Miss Carter? Oh, you're muted.
So sorry. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm here as a liaison with the Community Advisory Board Policy and Budget Subcommittee.
Great. Thank you for joining us today. Did everyone get a chance to introduce at this point? Great. Okay. So any announcements from members of the body?
Peggy, I have one. If I might, sorry, I didn't raise my hand this time. I wanted to share with the group, because I hadn't shared with this group yet, of an event that we have coming up that I thought was applicable to this group. So for the first time, this will be our inaugural event. We are hosting a Junior Women's Academy. It's a 2-day event with the Sheriff's Office. It's kind of has two purposes. One, we are trying to recruit women into law enforcement. We currently have, I think, about 15% of our sworn staff is female, which is slightly above the national average of 12%, but we are always trying to bring more women into the department. And so we decided we would do a junior academy for high school aged women or high school aged girls to introduce them to law enforcement as a possible career, but also just introduce them to law enforcement in general. So it's going to be June 29th and 30th. And we're holding it at our range facility, which is out on Marsh Creek Road. We will do some instructional blocks, things like self-defense, room clearing, crime scene processing. We have a lot of excellent demos, including dispatch and professional position opportunities. We've got 2 women on our SWAT team, so they're going to do a SWAT team demonstration with our helicopter. It's a really exciting event. I'm going to put a link to the event in the chat. Officially, our application process our application period has closed, but we received 40 applications, which I think is really great, from girls all over the county. We will be working to transport all those girls out to the facility because the range is a little bit far out there. But certainly if anyone has any individuals in mind that they think would benefit from this event, send them my way, because we're still in the application process, even though it closed on May 20th. But if there's someone that you think would maybe benefit from this experience, definitely shoot me an email, or you can, there is an application online, but if you get in touch with me directly, I can get them into the process. So we're excited about the event. We have some great women in the department, and it will be all women that are instructing over the 2 days. So I just wanted to share it with this group.
Thank you so much. That is very exciting and a wonderful, wonderful thing to share. Are you wanting that to be shared more broadly, or are you just thinking if we know individual people?
Either way, we did push it out through social media. I believe pushed it out through the individual supervisors. We've done a lot of individual recruiting at high schools with our deputies and our sheriff specialists. So it's gotten out there. But if, certainly if there's a group that you think would benefit, feel free to push that out. And I think if all goes well, this is something that we will offer on a regular basis. We do a youth academy as well, but this was a specific age group for high school and specifically for the girls.
Yeah, thank you very much. Any other announcements? Okay, seeing none, are there any public comment? Anybody from the public want to make a comment on any item under the jurisdiction of the RGOB data subcommittee that's not on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, we can move to the approval of the record of action, which is in the packet on page 3 to 6. And we could entertain a motion to approve the record of action. Is there any public comment about the record of action? Okay. Somebody from the body want to make a motion?
I move.
Second.
Thank you. Hey, you want to take a roll call vote, Nicole?
Did we open it up for public comment?
Oh, I kind of said that all in one sentence, but it is, is there any public comment about the approval of the record of action as presented? Okay, seeing none.
Becky?
Yes.
Melissa,
Yes.
Patrice,
Yes.
Gilbert, Gilbert still here? Gilbert, if you're able to unmute yourself to vote on record of action, otherwise I'm going to go to Shayla.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
Thank you, Nicole. Okay, so our next item is an update on the RJOB action regarding data request capacity for data analysis. And Patrice, that has your name next to it.
Yeah, so I'll just share a little bit about what was discussed at the last PPC meeting regarding this item. This was put on their agenda for, that was this past Monday, May 23rd. And so what was brought before them was really a item to talk about what to do in the interim between now and when the Office of Racial Equity and Social Justice comes online. The PPC members did agree that all of the work related to data collection and management and analysis, as well as other items to support RJOB would be best held within that office, but without really having a timeline as to when that office will come online, what will be the staffing pattern and its functions. It leaves a big question as to how to support RJOB's ongoing work in the meantime. So a couple of options did come up. One being potentially partnering with a university, to a local university to conduct some of the data analysis for the once we're able to receive data from various local law enforcement agencies. Actually, let me back up. One, the PPC would like to facilitate the requests between RJOB and then the other law enforcement agencies. So that is one thing. And between ORJ and the CAO's office, we would work together to get those items on their agenda to help support in the facilitation of making those requests. And then upon receiving any data following those requests and the need to have some staffing support to do sort of that follow-up, a lot of that's still yet to be determined. But at the very least, the question around, well, who would do the analysis, the option of exploring a potential partnership with the local university was one suggestion that came up. So there's still, needless to say, more that needs to be done around this, more conversations that need to be had about what's possible. The racial justice oversight body overall, in terms of the structure and how to best support the body in guiding the implementation of the recommendations, is now going to be referred to the Internal Operations Committee, which Supervisor Candace Anderson, as you know, she's one of the members of the PPC, also sits on that committee as well, so that there's more room to discuss what's the best way, again, to support in its current charge, the body being able to continue its work as it was laid out, both in its charge as well as the recommendations. So more to come. I believe we're looking to have this on the Internal Operations Committee agenda in July for their July meeting. Once that is confirmed, I'll certainly be happy to share that out with the full bodies, and so that folks are in attendance for that. Let me see. I think that's it for right now. Do folks have any questions? Or if there's anything I may have missed that folks want to fill in.
Thank you for repping for our committee. I was able to jump on the meeting for a little bit and was just grateful that you were there to interface. And I was really pleased to see that. I thought that when they were talking about it, they seemed to have a clear understanding of what our issue was, which I know there must have been a lot of work in the background to make that happen. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I forget to mention one other thing. So in the past, ORJ has really been tasked with providing that analysis support to RJOB, and that is because when ORJ sat in the county administrator's office before its now new placement in the probation department, right, it made a whole lot of sense to be able to have that broad reach across multiple agencies. We now no longer really have that reach, and it could potentially bring about some conflicts when you have one law enforcement agency analyzing another or several other law enforcement agencies' data and information, and being left with the interpretation of all of that. So those things as well came into play as to why there's a need to look at some alternatives. So I neglected to mention that as a frame or backdrop to why this is coming forward.
Does anybody have any? Oh, I see. Yes, Jill, go ahead.
I thought Patrice did a great job. The only thing that I would add is the reason why it's being referred to internal operations is because they're the body that reviews all the advisory bodies in the county. And so the support structure is what's being referred to IO to really determine where the best place is to house this in the meantime, because we really don't know what's happening with the Office of Racial Equity and Social Justice. So.
Well, overall, I definitely felt like that it was a supportive move, you know, on the part of that group to take up our concern and take it seriously. So I think it was definitely the right move to bring that concern to that group. So thank you for everybody who helped make that happen. Is there any other comment from the body about this item? And how about from anybody else?
I would just add, Becky, that in light of all of this, probation department will still continue to put out the documents that we have put out with that data. You know, that's not going to change. And so we will continue to pursue that and provide that on a quarterly basis. And then as a new analyst comes on board, that may change, but for right now, that's going to continue.
Thank you. Any other comments or discussion? Is there any follow-up in terms of, I'm glad to know what IO meant because they said that so many times and I thought, I don't know what they're talking about. So I'm glad to know where that went. I thought I wrote down IO, figure out what that means. So you unraveled that mystery for me. Is there anything that needs to happen like in support of what's going to happen on the next step there?
Can you restate that question again?
I'm just wondering if there's anything that I'm imagining you're going to go to represent at that meeting. Is that right, Patrice?
Most likely myself and then Paul Reyes from the CAO's office.
Yeah. So I was just asking if there's anything that you need from this group in order to support that next appearance.
Not at this moment. Again, that meeting will likely be how, or the agenda, this agenda item will likely be on their July meeting. And so we'll certainly let folks know, especially on this committee. I would encourage you to attend in case there's some other comments that you like to offer up. Luckily, Supervisor Anderson sits on both committees, so she has a lot of the background information, but Supervisor Burgess is the other IO committee member. And so some of this stuff might be new for her, though I'm sure she's being filled in by staff. So that's the only thing I could call out at the moment, is that once we have it finalized on the agenda, then certainly we'll send it out to all of you to be sure that you all know the time, and hopefully you all can show up and support.
Perfect. Thank you, Patrice. Okay. Anything else on this item before we move to the next? Okay, seeing none. So the next item is number 5, update on the police trainings on adolescent development, and that's Denise.
Yes, actually, I have some kind of exciting updates there. Aside from the fact that the Appropriations Committee did not want to put forward a project request entitled Policing the Teen Brain, even though it is trademarked. They did reach out to me and say, is there any way you could change the title of this? Because we can't put this one forward. And so we negotiated a couple of rounds of putting titles out there. And there was one about protecting youth. And then that got loaded because it was like, who are we protecting youth from? Law enforcement? That's not going to go over either. So we decided on a new title, and it's called Strategies for Supporting Youth in the Community. And that was basically cobbled together by me, Paul Schlesinger, Lara Delaney, and Congressman McInerney's staff to find the best one that they felt that they could put forward. So it is now out of our court. That baton has been passed. I did receive a phone call from the congressman's staff saying that it has been put forward, and have been advised that we'll probably get some input towards the beginning of the year. With this most recent year having been the first year in 10 years since the earmark program has been reinstated, there was a good bit of chaos and what didn't go as smoothly, I think, as everybody had liked, but they're hoping that it's going to be more efficient this time around and that we'll get notified earlier. The other thing that I want to share about this project is that we had spoken, I guess we sort of had a conversation in this meeting about the possibility of taking this to the legislative committee. And I did kind of reach out in a casual way to ask Lara Delaney, who sits on the legislative committee, what would that look like to, do something like this? And she mentioned that counties don't usually put forward their own legislation unless it's just county specific. But she also sits on another legislative committee, the state level, and made a connection to me with another person at the state level who wants to make changes to post to ensure that there is a juvenile program for training at post. So I chatted with her about how we got to this point and the rationale. She needs to make a case to legislators across the state for this. So I shared our data and the rationale that yes, there are huge problems with disparities across the country and Contra Costa and the state, but in our county, it's particularly bad for youth, and that's how we got here. And so she seems to be quite excited about the possibility here and is very supportive and thinks that even if Cal Cities is not able to move it forward, that they would likely be able to get a state legislator to put it forward on move it along the chain for the legislative committee to do something like this. And it may not be policing the teen brain that goes through post, but it may be something that speaks to moving, having a training for law enforcement surrounding youth cognitive development. So that was very encouraging. And I look forward to seeing what she's able to do. So anyway, that's all from work of this committee. So
it's great. Well, thank you for being so involved in all of the back and forthing, because I know that there was a lot of interest, and I'm sure that took a lot of time from you to really support.
It was a heavier lift than I think Patrice and I were expecting. It's certainly a heavier lift than I was expecting, with emails from Paul Schlesinger at Friday nights and stuff like that. That was a little insane, but I think the outcomes are beyond what I was expecting. And even if we don't get funding, if the state starts considering having youth development coursework and training for law enforcement, that's huge. That's huge. So we'll see where it goes. It's exciting.
Yeah. Any more discussion on this item from the body? Okay, any public comment? Okay, seeing none, I guess we can move to the next one. That has Chris's name next to it, but he is not actually present today. This is the follow-up on the ethnicity data collection discussion.
Yeah, unfortunately, Chris is out sick for some time. So my understanding is that for this agenda item, I think it's just a placeholder here for any debriefs that the body wanted to have with regards to the presentation that took place at the last quarterly meeting.
I found it to be informative and interesting, but I'm not exactly sure what we're supposed to do with the information. I don't know if anybody else kind of got a clearer action out of it. Did anybody else feel like that too? Because I'm not sure, who is it that actually like there are certain things I guess that we could make recommendations to, right? But a lot of it was talking about the way in which information is collected. Like I didn't actually see what it should look like. I saw here are the problems, but.
One of the things that came to my mind when I was listening to it is, you know, the way that data is collected with race and ethnicity, a lot of that, at least for law enforcement, is driven by the Department of Justice. And so as I was listening to it, I'm like, yeah, it all makes sense to me, but that is a federal and state derived data collection that I'm not sure how to, like you said, like how to actually make those changes so that we're collecting data that is more accurate, because that's how we're reporting the data is based on those parameters. So I kind of agree with you, Becky. I thought it was a lot of really good information, and I'm not sure exactly how to implement the changes that and even what those changes exactly look like.
I did really relate to it though, I have to say, because my husband is from Mexico and he is not white, but there is not a box. I mean, like he's done his DNA. So like he is like an indigenous person from Mexico, but there's no box for him to check. I've had that conversation with him, like, and I think that it does all those things that were talked about in terms of like just like not capturing a true picture of what's happening. It's really influenced by what boxes are available to people. And if you can't, and what does that communicate? If you can't even check a series of boxes that represents you, that itself is sort of not a good feeling. And it's not like it's that unusual. I think there's a lot of people who are Latino who are not white or black or Asian or other things that are on there. Anybody have a brilliant idea of how we can operationalize what we saw or learned? Patrice, yes, go ahead.
No, I don't have a brilliant idea for that. What I will say is, you know, it's really complicated, I feel, because on one level, the more boxes you have, the more you sort of like bifurcate people, and it's harder to understand, I would think. Let's just put in the context of racial disparities in the justice system, right? We're collecting data across race and ethnicity so we can best understand where the disparities lie across certain race and ethnic groups or ethnicities. The more boxes, the more we can bifurcate people. And then you may or may not see what is truly how much of an impact the disparity is actually having on a certain group or groups of people. This is just my kind of take on it. And then also our justice system has a very racialized history. So there's that element too. The fewer boxes you have, right, the more you homogenize people, the more you kind of clump them in, and you don't then get to see the unique experiences. So I don't think there's ever a good win, to be honest with you. There won't be a very perfect or ideal scenario situation when it comes to data collection across race and ethnicity. We live in a very multicultural, multiracial society now. One of which always have been to some degree. It's just that the experiences of those various groups have over the course of time have been, you know, kind of like lumped in together. So it's kind of tricky. And so I think if nothing else, the presentation sort of alluded to that to a degree. And then to your other point of then how do we at least urge public, let's just start with public agencies or our systems to at least acknowledge more variation across race and ethnicity and the importance of that. But then to what end, right? What story will that tell us for certain groups as of compared to what may have been shown or demonstrated before? You know, certainly worth exploring, but I really don't have an answer or a brilliant idea to it, just sort of in the same vein, acknowledging the complexity of it all. Data is so static, but our realities are not. Mm-hmm. So that's the conundrum.
Anybody else have from the body have something to comment or question? Cheryl, I see you put your camera on. Do you have something to share?
Of course I do.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
So, okay, so what you just said, honestly, I've dealt with this my whole life, okay, but it's different because usually the box says something like this. The box will say something like, white, not Hispanic, Black, not Hispanic, right? And then, or it'll say, Latino, not Black. Or it didn't say Latino when I was little, it'll say Hispanic, no Black. So you sit there and you say, okay, so which one I'm supposed to buy? Which one I'm supposed to mark? So this disclaimer is forcing you, as Ms. Patrice said, to try and figure out which box you're supposed to mark. And when you're little, it didn't have that. Back in like late 70s, 80s, it didn't have that other box. And it didn't have the option to mark more than one. Mm-hmm. You didn't have that option until like, I think in the 90s or something when I was in college. Then they started letting you mark more than one. Mm-hmm. You couldn't mark more than one. So in a way, what Ms. Patrice is saying that yes, you get to mark more than one, but does that water down the statistics to the actual experience? So yes, I get to mark, you know, my mother is Creole. So, you know, I have a German grandfather. So do I get to mark that one? Do I get to mark, you know, the French box? Do I get to mark the Black box? Do I get to mark the Latino box? I get to mark the Middle Eastern box? I can mark all of them. Then you have this one where you have white, Black, Latino, Middle Eastern. I get to mark all of them. But the reality is when my 6'2" brown child, when he's driving, what does the officer see? So the experience, the reality of these child with this sun-kissed skin, and yeah, okay, I admit it. When I saw his picture the other day, he looked like he just got off a boat. Truthfully, he didn't look like he looked different, depending on what picture you look at. It depends, right, on what the officer sees with his eyes. If he looks like a Latino, it looks like a black guy. But what does the officer see? And so these reports, even if you're self-reporting, what does the officer see? So there's a difference here. And I think that's where all of this gets a little twisted. What is the officer seeing and what is the officer reporting? Because we see it all the time on TV. Say the witness says, well, I think he was, and they all look the same. I think he was about 5'10" white guy. He's about 6'2" black guy with curly hair. They all look the same. So it could be anybody. You look and you're like, where were you at 2 o'clock yesterday? I'm just checking because I want to know where you were. So that's where we kind of get lost in this, if you have 15 or you have 5 choices to choose from. That's why they pulled out Hispanic or Latino. This is why they pulled it out, because it's in ethnicity is not a so-called race, because you can be white and Latino. You can be from the African diaspora and still have Latino roots. So that's why they pulled it out, because you can be from Cuba, which is Central American, right? Which is from the Latin culture, and be from the African diaspora and still claim to be Black person who is Latino. This is why they pulled it out like that. And so that you can mark both boxes. So that's why it became a thing. So I think that part of the disparity we see here is, what are we looking for in the data? You notice I always go back to that question.
Yeah.
What are we looking for in the data? I think you start from that question rather than letting the data drive the question. Let the question drive the data. And then we can always get the answer we're looking for.
Well, can I say, Miss Cheryl, since you always call me Miss Patrice, Miss Cheryl, I know Denise is tickled just to hear you say that. As the resident researcher here in our office, that is her main question. What is the question?
I'm a scientist, so they.
Yes.
Well, the other thing I would add, Cheryl, is, well, first of all, I agree with you surrounding this, but I would also suggest that it's very possible that some of the RIPA analyses that will be coming forward from the state early next year will be able to help guide us in some of these questions, because what you pointed out with regard to your son and what does law enforcement see as he's driving down the road, I'm just going to say, they see his skin color, right? As we all do when we're driving down the road. So then it's what we're looking for in this. And I have said this throughout much of my research career, is that race in ethnicity in a survey is a proxy for skin color. And that's really what it is, because we all operate that way. But we don't talk about it that way. And we really, as researchers, cannot handle, Cheryl, we can't handle your genetic and background complexity. You are way too much for us.
I love it. Let me throw one more bone in there for you today. Today is World Redhead Day, and I have my daughter is this beautiful redhead with these freckles all over her. So nobody knows when they look at her. They're like, wait.
Yeah.
Where'd she come from?
Exactly. But you know, as when we're looking at population level and community level experiences, we've got to back up a bit from that individual level and look at the breadth of it, while also keeping in mind the individual experience and how that explains and how we understand some of the numbers that we're seeing. So anyway, I agree with you. And I think I think we should wait and see what RIPA has to say, because if the state has been doing RIPA, I've also been complaining since I've been in this role with the state DOJ. When I make the presentation with our DOJ data and somebody in the community says, well, my neighborhood is mostly Asian, where does that fit in DOJ data? And I say, they don't report it that way. And this is exactly what Melissa was speaking about. If they are now going to be dealing with RIPA data, hopefully they'll get a little bit more savvy and make some changes about how they also collect data and how we can then report it so that it's just a bit more sophisticated. But, you know, right now I can't get that data from DOJ either. So
I was going to chime in with regards to RIPA, and I don't know if I can share my screen or if I have the.
We can give you privileges for that.
Because I can show you, I have the RIPA app up on my computer right now, and you can see what it's limited in what the officer has options of entering, and this is based on officer perception. So
there's at the bottom of your screen, is there a box to say share screen?
Okay,
Yeah.
let me see if I can get it up, because I think you guys might find it interesting. Okay, let me know if you see this.
Yeah, we can see it.
So this is an app on my computer, which I believe is very similar to what the officers have, but I'm just in an office and keep that in mind. So I kind of started entering a RIPA incident in here. And so this is, first it asked me location, time, that type of information. So this is step 2. And this is what the officer has of choices to enter. And you can check more than one box on here, but perceived race and ethnicity, and this is based on a penal code here, and I can click that link to the penal code which defined these as the options. So for perceived race or ethnicity, these are the options that the officer has to choose from. And then we also have perceived gender. These are, you know, there's only 5 options that an officer has for perceived gender. Perceived LGBT, yes or no. Age, look, is just a data entry field, you know, and limited or no English fluency, either check or no check, perceived or known disability. So it's extremely limited. And this is based upon, they have, you know, quick links to, I don't know if you can see this. Can you see my screen now? So it goes to quick links to the code that define the data collection for RIPA. So it is interesting, and it goes to both Patrice and Cheryl's point. So an officer, you know, who stops somebody, they're going to just use these options, check or no, or any combination of those, and that's what the RIPA data is going to be derived from.
No wonder they keep calling me Ethiopian.
You know, I wonder at how much training, I mean, this is not the purpose of this body right here, but like looking at the perceived gender part, just as a parent of a non-binary individual, like, how well trained do you think the officers are to know what is a trans man? Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
I don't think they are, and or I know they're not. And there is, you know, I think, and this kind of gets into my personal opinion, the level of subjectivity is, and this is based on officer perceived,
Right.
you know, it is defined as perceived, but this really opens it up to a level of subjectivity that's very high, because it's going to be based on that officer's personal experience that they're drawing from. And that's an officer who's 21 years old to an officer who's, you know, we'll have officers here shortly up to 57 years old, and whatever life experience they bring with them to that. So definitely.
I wonder if have they ever done any like inter-rater reliability kind of thing, like where you like show the same picture to a group of people and have them, you know, how do you perceive this person, to see how completely like whatever that is.
Yeah, that's a good question. Can I stop sharing? Does anyone have any questions about the screen?
Thank you for the share, though. This is great to see.
Jill's hands up.
Oh, Jill, go ahead, Jill.
Yeah, a couple things. If you could go down to the lower part, limited perceived or known disability. I find that super fascinating because I'm not sure where like Asperger's would come in on that. Like, where would you put it? Because it's not really a mental health, it's not really necessarily an intellectual disability. So that's super interesting. I guess other disability it would fall under. But my other kind of, as I'm looking at this, I think I see this as a training tool. So if there is real confusion or it doesn't match up, it's an opportunity to kind of say, hey, here's an area we need to improve if people aren't recognizing various parts of this, because it is pretty complex. And I could kind of see people just whipping through it and going, I'm not even going to bother, because it is rather complex. So that will be interesting as time goes on to see how this plays out.
And to add a level of complication to that, the department doesn't get the data. It goes directly to the Department of Justice. And now, you know, maybe down the road that will change, but yeah, how does a department do any kind of debriefing or training of the information when it's not anything that we receive?
Definitely not going to be a training tool in the short run for you guys, for sure.
No.
It's
Can you go
almost
back
more
up
of
to
a
the top
temp-
one more time? So I'm sorry.
It's almost more of a temperature check at this point in time, I would think.
My thought is it's to identify trends, you know, a particular officer trend of continuous completion of these forms the same way. I'm not sure. Yeah, it's very up in the air for us as well.
And I wonder why they put Middle Eastern and South Asian together. That seems weird too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I'll stop sharing.
No, thank you. That was very helpful. Very, very.
Thank you.
informative.
Thank you, Melissa. That was
Yeah.
really helpful.
Sure.
So I do think that, Cheryl, your point was a good one in that it has evolved over time. I do remember that also, that there used to, you know, like when they uncoupled being Latino or Hispanic from race, I remember that very distinctly, that then it became a two-part question. And I guess that, you know, just the fact that there are many people who still don't have a box, it's like, I don't know what the answer is. I really don't, but I think that it's impactful, right? It makes a difference in like the statistics that we see on the news or how people get represented. There's that part too. So there's how it affects like individuals in the everyday, but then there's also like how our perception of things are, because before you had those that separated, that was missing a layer of information, obviously, about people who are Latino and Black, or Latino and Asian and Latino and other things. So but it is kind of hard to know when to stop, because especially in today's world, you know, like if my son, who's half white and half Latino, you know, marry someone who potentially is Middle Eastern and Vietnamese, then their children marry somebody who, you know, I mean, like it kind of devolves very quickly into something that, you know.
But it goes back and speaks to what's the purpose of the question.
Right.
And if the purpose of the question, which is my argument, is that it's about the color of your skin,
Yeah.
then are you brown? Are you black? Are you yellow? Are you white? I mean, and then you don't have to get into the weeds of all of that, because if that's really what it's about, it's as simple as that at a discrimination kind of level.
But that probably also really varies depending on where you are, because
Exactly.
I mean, like we just have in the Bay Area, like a lot more people who have multiple identities, you know? So, I mean, I know there are other places too, but like there are other places where I think it is probably more straightforward because there aren't as many people who are, you know, who have that background. So,
Yeah.
but in regards to exactly like how it applies to us is how are people perceiving the race of the people who they are stopping, right? That's kind of
Right.
where that is where yeah. But I don't know whether, I mean, like, I would be really curious to see how accurate people could be to identify a Native American from a South Asian, from a Latino, from a, I mean, I don't think most people who don't have familiarity with, you know, many members of those different groups would be able to discern, because
No.
like you're saying, they just see
No.
a brown person.
Right. In which case, then why don't we just ask, are you a brown person? I mean, some better question than that, obviously, but that's what we're looking at. And it doesn't, in some ways, I would argue, it doesn't matter what color brown you are, that you're just brown. In these kinds of circumstances, if it's about somebody driving past you and looking in your window to see what color you are, and that if that is indeed how decisions are made, well, yeah,
It's a complicated one.
having that level of detail as a, you know, at a policy level and understanding what's going on in practice it doesn't work, but it is something that's important to us as individuals. So it's a balancing act.
Yeah, it's almost like, did you perceive the person who you pulled over to be a person of color? Like,
Right.
one,
Right.
or not?
And then what kind? Yeah, what kind of person of color? And that's where I think it's going to go with the RIPA stuff, is that they're going to start looking at it from, compare the perceptions to the realities. I mean, unfortunately, they don't have a direct link, because I don't know, Melissa, you don't know if the RIPA data actually gets linked to an arrest or anything along those lines.
Yeah.
See, that would be really interesting, is if the RIPA data could be linked
Yeah.
to an actual booking,
Right.
then we could see what's going on. But I thought they had a section in there about the outcome. If it was a cite and release, or if it was somebody brought in, and the rationale for it.
Let me keep going. You got to remember, I work in an office now. I am far removed, but yeah, let me, while you continue to talk, let me.
Yeah,
You had the
no
same,
worries.
you're having the same experience I had today when I was supervising lunch recess. Like, what are actually the rules? What are they allowed to use their phones like that? Is that allowed? I don't know. I haven't been on a site for long.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
I had an overhead projector in my classroom when I was last in the classroom.
Just ask them, they'll tell you the truth, Becky.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. The fact that 100% of them were on their phones made me think that it probably was allowed. Okay, so that's number 6. Anything else about that item? We'll just keep our eyes open for the right opportunity and increase our education. I guess that's, you know, where we sit right now. And just as we come through decisions that do come to us, we'll keep that information in mind and look for opportunities to support improving that.
Well, one potential opportunity
Yeah.
is, and look, thanks also, Melissa, for sharing that screen. One potential opportunity is looking at the penal codes that are then defining the selections. So in terms of potential policy changes, that could be something that, now I'm not saying we take over all those penal codes, but just to think about in the background that if we wanted to have or make some inroads, whether it be RIPA data specifically or any data that is collected from law enforcement agencies that have to go forward to DOJ, looking at what penal codes are actually defining that and where we can make room for more could probably be an opportunity for policy change. I also think too, in that section about disabilities, on our side of the house, when it comes to providing resources to individuals who are justice system involved, when we look at disabilities, we might even see, right, co-occurring disorders or substance use disorders, right, as a disabling condition. But when a law enforcement officer interacts with someone that may be under the influence, right, we're seeing it more or less as an offense, criminal behavior, things of that nature. So it'd be interesting to see if we made some sort of little switch there, how then even in the perceiving of someone who is under the influence, how that could be, how we could reorient then law enforcement's response to say, oh, this person might need some support here. Just a thought. But those may be some opportunities for some system change, policy change work, if we want to get knee deep with the definition.
So who does that? Because I don't know.
Becky, we're not adding it to the next steps for our next meeting. It's just too much.
No, but when you were talking, Patrice, it made me think, like, what is that quote that never underestimate the input or the impact of a small group of people, dedicated to change, because that is the only thing that ever does make change. So I know. Okay. We'll take it one step at a time. Yeah. One step. Okay, good. I think I have an old version of the agenda, but is the next thing on their next steps?
Yes.
Okay. I finally found my printed copy that was stuck between two things. So one thing that I did want to talk about is whether we could reschedule our June meeting, because this is now the third year that meeting coincides with the time that I always go camping. And the last 2 years I've just done it from the campground, but I realize that this is like an ongoing scheduling. I can try to change our reservation in the future, but for this year it's all set. And I wonder if we could entertain that, or I could try to see if somebody else from my office could take over, like either Lynn or Nick, like they did before. Are other people going to be gone during that time, or am I the only one? June 23rd.
I'll actually be gone that time too.
Jill?
I'm not on this committee, but I think that there's been a holding pattern with data and analysis and all of that stuff. And there should be more answers coming out maybe in July after the IO meeting. So, it's not always a bad idea. A lot of advisory bodies take a break 1 month out of the summer. So just to take the guilt off of you.
Thanks.
You shouldn't be.
I know, my husband was like, is this going to
vacation.
happen every year for the rest of our lives? And I was like, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, so I'm in favor of that, canceling June and then we reconvene in July.
That seems like
Because
appropriate.
internal
Given
operations-
2022.
Yeah, internal operations is scheduled for July 11th. So it'll be prior to your next meeting.
Okay. Anyone object to that course of action? Okay, great. My husband will be happy with that. Anything else that we should discuss before we adjourn? Denise has her finger up.
Yes, sorry, I'm just looking at my calendar for the July meeting.
Oh.
And that would be July 28th for the July, just because
Yes.
we have the next data subcommittee. But the other thing, Becky, I noticed when I was looking at the notes from
Yes.
last month's meeting was that you were going to provide
The cumulative school.
the cumulative, and
did.
I
saw
lost
that in
sight
there.
of it when I was sort of working on the agenda. So do you want to put that back on the agenda for July? I'll
I
make
do-
sure it gets
I
there.
do want to put on the agenda for July, and I think it makes more sense to do it then because I can do it cumulative through the entire fiscal year. So I think that that's actually the right time to do it.
Okay, that sounds good. And then that would also be the time that probation would have data for the end of the fiscal year or this fourth quarter of the fiscal year. So we will be on the agenda as well.
Okay. All right. Anything else from the body or the public? Okay. Well, then we can close the meeting at 4:03. Thank you, everybody, for being here
Okay.
today.
Thanks.
And I hope you have a
Thank you.
great beginning of summer. We'll see you in July.
And welcome back again, Shayla. Congratulations on that little one.
Congrats,
of yours.
Shayla.
Okay.
Congratulations, Shayla. Excited for you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.